Welcome back to another episode of Right Here in Mass. Joining me today is Julio César Román, who is the owner of Microplant Studio in South Boston, which is more than just a culmination of his life's work. Microplant Studio is the first Latinx-owned plant business in New England and the first plant store to 3D design and print plant products. Julio, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Yes, I am very excited to have you here. We have not had any guests yet who are in the plant space. And so when I came across your business, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool company to showcase. And I'm very excited to have you here just to talk about what you've been doing. So I would love to start off with that by having you share with our listeners who you are and what you do.
So yeah, let's start with who I am as a person. I think that's very important. Sometimes we forget that the business owner actually has a construct behind it, right? It has
Mm,
informed who they are, both as a business owner, but who they are as a person. So I'm originally from Puerto Rico, born there and partially raised there. And then also I moved to the USA, and then we moved from New Jersey to New York with my mom and my sister. And then we ended up in Hartford, Connecticut, where I spent most of my middle school and high school time and part of my elementary education time as well.
mhm.
We were there for a period of time, and then I started applying right after, during my time in high school, started applying to colleges, and I was lucky enough to work very closely with my middle school teacher, which helped me get to the Museum School of Fine Arts. I ended up moving in 1997 to Boston. I got my degree in fine arts, and then I decided to break into the nonprofit world, where I worked for over 15 years. And then I ended up getting a master's of public policy from Tufts University, where I was able to spend an amazing amount of time learning, not only from my professors, but also from my peers.
Mm. Wonderful. And so I think it's very cool to hear about your background in fine arts and also policy and the nonprofit world. You mentioned too, having worked for a nonprofit for 15 years. And I'm curious to hear what, I guess, inspired the transition in your career to go from being in the nonprofit space to now founding and owning Microplant Studio. I'm curious to hear about that experience.
Well, to back up a little bit, once I actually finished my degree at the Museum School of Fine Arts, I was actually doing a lot of art exhibitions in different museums and so on. So one of the things that I
Mm,
wanted to do is really give back to the community. I strongly believe that people helped me, and I wanted to give back. So I decided to work at the nonprofit in the South End, where I was able to be the director of youth programs, where I also was able to develop programming around the arts, but also around plants. So one of the things that we did, we partner up with 4-H, um, and really rethink how we can bring young people both as an intersection of them exploring who they are, but also an exploration of how they can take care of nature, but also of themselves, but also gain greater respect for our nature, right, for our environment. So we were
mhm,
able to partner up with 4-H. We also worked with 4-H Appalachians Mountain Club as a means to really create a cohesive approach to youth development, and as a means to really help our young people move from the city to more to understand how nature, being around nature, could be. For example, we did a lot of hiking in New Hampshire, Appalachians Trail, which many of us have gone there, both for hiking or snowboarding or for other purposes, right? And it has been fun. And then from there, I worked in other senior management positions in the nonprofit field. But also, I ended up going into Boston Public School. I spent a short period of time, and that's where I decided to figure out, okay, well, what are going to be my next steps. During that time, I was actually managing an elective programming for the school, and I was so from sewing, creating programming for the high risk students, but also really figuring out how we can bring nature into the classroom. So I figure out, well, I'm from Puerto Rico. I love nature. I love being around green spaces, right? I've been doing programming around plants and gardening. And the question is, what do I do next? Sometimes you have to create a little door for yourself. and that door hopefully becomes an opportunity. And that's what I did. I actually decided to move on from working for Boston Public Schools, and then I went through a surgery. And during that time, was a very emotional, distressful, or stressful
Yeah.
time in my life where I had to figure out what I wanted to do next. And what I ended up doing was during my recovery process, I started propagating plants. I ended up with 250
Oh
plants.
my gosh.
Yeah, that's a lot of tiny little plants. In that time, I lived in a tiny little studio space. So imagine little tiny plants taking over your tiny little space. Um, so that for me was actually fun in the sense because when you are recovering, optimism becomes a black hole. And
Mm,
I think seeing plants being not only seeing them become small, right, but seeing them grow, it gives you a sense of reality that there's something better and greater out there. So optimism definitely increases. Overall, I am an optimistic person, but when you go through a very tough recovery, when you're very active, going to the gym, and all of a sudden you have to put all those physical activities on hold, and
mhm,
all of a sudden you have an amazing experience, right? And that is through being able to propagate plants and end up with 250 plants. So the cool thing is, and having an arts background, it gives you an opportunity to start rethinking how you see yourself in relationship to the world, right? And
right.
what type of impact you want to make with whatever you undertake. And in my case, I wanted to still be close to nature. I still want to bring, and I still want to be close to a sense of community. And how do I do that? And I think the easiest way of doing it was, how do you do that? And it's through plants. So I started thinking, okay, so if I'm able to bring my passion for plants to the community at large, I think I have been able to still give back in some ways. I think some of us in the business world focus so much on the bottom line and really making money. For me, was also getting a satisfaction and fulfilling that need to be connected to a sense of community, but also being
Mhm.
able to teach back something. And that's what I was able to do. And during that time, I started interviewing, believe it or not, as well. uh, I'm like, I have to have more than one basket. I can have
I was gonna
one,
say
all
you
my
are
eggs.
multi-passionate.
Yeah, and multitasking, understanding that I did have to create opportunity. The reality is, I come from a single mom,
Mhm,
right? I at that time I did not, and I still don't depend on my family. I'm, self-sufficient. And when you have to depend on yourself, you have to think very critically how you're moving
mhm,
forward, and you have to be extremely careful of the decisions that you make, right? So I don't have someone financially to rely on. So during that time, when I was thinking about my interviewing process, but also trying to think about my business idea, I started to develop my name for my business, and then the logo, and also the website.
mhm,
Uh, so the logo that you see right now on my website is actually a logo that I have developed, right? And then the website itself is also something that I actually created and still maintain and still work on my graphics. So the reason I share that with you is because when we think about moving from one job to another job, there's always skills in your toolbox that you'll be able to
mhm.
transfer, right? A lot of people think that and I know I thought about this as a kid, as a high school student. The writing was not going to be critical, but it is now. I thought math skills were not going to be important, but they are now. And the the language that I relied the most, I remember growing up, was my language of visual arts because that's what
Mm,
I was known for. I received so many awards from my art career, and I use that as the vehicle for me to communicate with people, both from a social justice perspective, but from a visual fine arts perspective, right? And I
mhm,
think all that came into a nice, I call it gift of a package that was able to open that gift little by little and create a business, right? Because when you think about saving money, right, to hire a graphic designer, to hire someone to develop your website, that is a lot of money to invest and hire contractors, right? So in some ways, I was able to balance both my skill set and be able to really rethink how I can save money.
mhm.
And then I'll just pause because the background. I'm actually at the studio right now. I don't know if you noticed that. Um, but yeah, so the ability to be able to really rethink how you can transfer skills, I think it's something that is very critical. Your past experiences do not work in silos. They're always
Right.
there's interlap, I think, or an overlap or an intersection of how those both management skills can be applied into when you're building your own business. So I always believe although I'm not a taker, I guess I am now. uh, um, I think, to really rely on one is on the skill sets that you have gained. Also, do not second guess your judgment. I think that's something that a
Yeah,
lot of us are always really rethinking. Like, how do you move from not being sure that you want to build a business to being sure, right? And
hmm,
because I'm not a risk taker, all anxiety levels were really high all the time, and they still are because this is something that it's very unknown to me. And I'm the first also in my family to have and own a business, so I'm very
good
lucky
for
in that
you.
sense. Yeah, I'm very lucky in that sense, but also very scared at the same time.
Yes, you have an incredible story. Oh my gosh. And I love what you shared too about the point that all of the experiences that you've had in your career and all the different positions that you've had can all cross over into what you're doing today. So, like you said, the skill sets that you've learned and the things that you've been able to put into your toolbox can still be applicable. And I love that you've kind of cultivated that with what you're doing at Micro Plant Studio. And so, knowing that you are now a business owner, what was it like to transition from having an employer to now having yourself as your employer?
So I have been very lucky with both the executive directors that I have worked with and for, right? When I have been hired to build programming or lead an initiative. So
Mhm.
by default, I have been, without even knowing, being trained to do this type of work. I think being a business owner requires a lot of discipline, requires long hours. And that's something that I was already doing. When you work in a nonprofit, your heart has to be in it. So that's
Yes.
something that I truly believe in, that anything that I have always undertaken, I always have given my all. So working for myself, I think I have a little less time with my family, a little bit less time with my friends, a little bit less time um, to think of Tweety Bird. Uh, but I think it is rewarding because it's almost like I always relate this back to my work, right? I've worked with young people where I remember seeing them in elementary school, and now all of a sudden, right? You see them going to graduate school, going to Harvard and opening their own business, right? Or
Yeah.
watching a plant, right? Grow from a little seed to a full plant where people actually are now buying it. So the way I like to think about being a business owner is really what you invest and what you put into the business. That's how much is going to grow. And people, and when I say people, consumers or customers, right? They know if your heart is in it because of the relationship that you build with them and in the type of conversation that you have with them. One of the things that I enjoy is really being an authentic individual and having authentic conversations.
Hmm.
And that is how you truly develop a relationship with individuals. Especially in the industry that I'm in, a lot is about knowing what type of plant works for individuals. For example, one of the things that we try to do is really getting to know the individual so we can marry that plant with that individual. It's really matching the lifestyle, right, of that individual and the plant, right? So, for example, if you are traveling a lot, we're not going to give you a plant that requires watering uh,
Yeah.
once a week. You need a plant, most likely, that needs watering every week and a half to 2 weeks, right? So it's really being critical, be very intentional when you're opening your business and being intentional with your time, being able to manage your time, both from being able to find rest time, right? To fill up your bucket again, finding that energy, that inner strength because owning a business is not always smooth. You're always going to have valleys and hills, right? It's going to be like a
Mm.
slope or like a roller coaster, right? And being able to understand that there's going to be hard times, it's going to be difficult times, and being able to pivot. And that's what we did during COVID time. During COVID time, we were able to really rethink what happened to the production industry, and we started to really rethink what 3D, right, new technology can actually do as a means to develop new product, but also have products available to the consumer, to our neighbors, but something that could be edgy as well, fun.
Mhm.
And we recognize that we ordered about 30K in hard goods. And hard goods for us, they're actually pots.
Mm.
Those 30Ks, because things were not being shipped fast enough, or because the production line has come to a full stop during COVID, we never actually got it on time.
Oh,
As a
wow.
result of it, yeah. So as a result of it, we pretty much decided to really rethink how we can have pots for plants. And because of it, we were able to pivot, and now we do 3D printing. So really rethinking, being a business owner and working for yourself is always being able to think on your toes and being able to think of creative ways to sustain your business, even when there are different variables that are going to affect the bottom line, even when there's also new businesses that are moving into the neighborhood and they become your competitors, right?
Mhm.
So really rethinking, and also how you can be the first. I think that's also kind of hard to do, but
Yeah.
again, going back to the basics, what are your skill set and what can you do with your business as a way to highlight your skill set and your passion as well.
Yeah. I mean, you shared such great reminders for business owners here between the importance of pivoting and adapting when things out of your control happen, and also being able to invest in the people who are supporting you, like you shared, the customers, and how you personally seek to find the right plans that will fit with how they live their lives and what works best for their situation. So I think those are two really important things for business owners to keep in mind. And of course, a recurring theme of this podcast has been your very evident passion for nature and plants. And so, knowing that, of course, that's exactly what Microplant Studio focuses on, but also how you incorporated nature and plants in your nonprofit work and those positions that you held there. I'm curious to hear why that focus. Like, I know you mentioned where you grew up, that kind of helped to cultivate it, but I'm curious if there's any like data out there that shows the benefits of people being surrounded by nature and plants or anything like that.
I think I am the perfect example of what nature can do, right? I go back
Mm,
to the surgery, right? When you see things grow, it gives you a sense of optimism, right? Data
mm,
has shown that plants can not only just heal, not in the literal sense, but the emotional part, right? That when you go through surgery, it does take a toll. But also, I always go back to what I miss, right? I miss home, and home for me is Puerto Rico, right? And although Puerto Rico is part of the United States of America, I still miss it, and I cannot travel enough because it does cost money, right? When you're a business
mm,
owner, you have to figure out what costs the most. And when you ask me that such a simple but such a powerful question about the impact of nature, why I even mentioned what is home to me, I always go back to Puerto Rico because before I went and got my surgery, I actually decided to travel to Puerto Rico first.
mhm,
And the reason was because I wanted to be around nature. And I wanted to be around water because water is a sense of tranquility,
mhm,
right? And also the power of nature, right? So Puerto Rico is a tropical forest. It's the only tropical forest in the United States of America. And I remember going there and the peace that I felt in my heart, right? It grounded me. And that's something that I feel very unique. It made me feel whole. And it helped me prepare for this surgery that I had to go through, right? And even when I was feeling shitty, and I'm sorry for saying the word shitty, but but when I feel it, well, I was feeling horrible. um, I still, when I was there, I still feel so uplifted because I felt the breeze,
mm,
right? And I remember as a child, the things that made me so happy about being around nature was seeing rainbows. And one of the most powerful thing that happened to me when I was in Puerto Rico was I just didn't see one rainbow. I saw two rainbows. So that really uplifted me a lot, right? So you asked me what is the power of nature. Sometimes we as individuals connect with the color green, and that could be very stimulating, especially if you experience sad. So I'm one of those individuals that actually experience sad. If people don't know
Yeah.
what sad is, the seasonal disorder, depression, right? So being around bright light, right? It gives me the strength that I need. Sun provides some level of vitamin, right? Being around nature and feeling the wind, right, caused by plants. We sometimes don't become even aware, especially in the city, that the power of nature can cause some level of happiness, right? So for me, I think about that, right? And the idea that nature it is the lawn, right, of this planet, and I can be around it, especially when I go back home in Puerto Rico. That's amazing. The other thing is that I can connect even closer to the business when people walk through the door and they say, "Wow, I can feel the difference of the air and also the temperature. Even when it's really hot, you can still feel the level of humidity is very different than if you are at home because the density, although we're a boutique plant shop, we still have enough plants that you can create an ambiance that is very unique. You don't feel like you're actually in the city of Boston. Part of it is because of our structure that we have of the layout of the space. It is more of a boutique in the front, right?
Hmm.
Where it's very gifty. You have plants that are potted in 3D pot, in ceramic pots, and so on. And then in the yellow zone, which is in the rear of the studio, you have plants that are more like in greenhouse pots. These are plastic pots, right? And when people come in, they can start seeing the transition from the front of the studio all the way to the back. And they can start sensing and expressing, literally expressing, oh, it feels so different in here. And nature's supposed to make us feel happier, much more relaxed, and at the end of the day, optimistic, because when you're actually investing so much time, right, into taking care of a plant, and all of a sudden you see little babies coming out, the plant reassures you that you're doing something good, right?
Yeah.
And that you're investing, right? The way you treat your plant is the way that the plant is going to speak back to you. It might not speak to you in the literal sense like we are now, right? Communicating with words, but it will speak to you by producing more leaves, greener leaves, hopefully, and not yellow leaves, and babies as well, right? It will have offsprings. So that's a way that I think nature has not only just the physical part of being able to, for us to have healthy air, but also the visual part of looking at a plant that is growing and say, wow, I feel so great. I accomplished something today, right? And that is watering the plant so it can grow healthier.
Yes, I totally agree. It's gratifying, I imagine, for someone to witness that, to know that their work contributed to the growth. And like you shared, nature and plants are a great symbolism for growth, opportunity, happiness, and what have you. And I also feel like for me, when I step outside, it's like grounding. Like I feel very at ease. So it's like sometimes and people always talk about too how they physically need to step out of their workspace to just take a break and recharge. And I find that too when I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed in my home office. I'm like, I just need to get outside and like grab a chair, sit in my driveway, and just sit in the sun because it's so helpful to just have that positivity radiating. So I totally agree with you.
Great.
Yeah. And I know that you have some exciting things happening in this coming year for Microplant Studio. I know that you shared prior to this recording that you have some construction going on. So I would love to give you the opportunity to share maybe more about that or any other new exciting projects that you're working on in the coming year.
Sure. So a little bit about Microplant Studio. So Microplant Studio, we are full service plant studio, right? But we also do floral arrangements as well, and
Mhm.
we do a lot of custom orders. And we go to people's houses. We provide plant services in addition to the 3D printing that we also do. So the way I like to help people think about Microplant Studio, it's based both on service, right, that we provide both online, right, but also home. But it's about the product, right? So our product is very unique. We do a lot of custom floor arrangement, which means if you come into the store, people get very excited and say, "Hey, I need a flower arrangement for this occasion." We'll be more than happy to do it. Sometimes we do events and so on. In terms of the business as a whole, we have been in business since 2017, right? What does that look like? Both from a business perspective that is almost entering its what, almost 10 years, right? And what does that look like in terms of also expansion? So we have been able to stick around since COVID. We have been now the longest boutique plant shop in Boston, um, and the first one. So we have been thinking very carefully and very thoughtfully what could be if we open a second location. We have been looking for second locations almost for 4 years, which I think that's a lot of time for planning. uh, and most people would just say, you know what, we found a spot, we're just going to go ahead and open it. But because this business is based on a disposable income, we have to be very careful where we open and how we open it and what is the intention. Um,
Mhm.
throughout the process before COVID, we were doing workshops in-house, but we realized that we couldn't do it because we don't have a venting system as a way to keep the airflow. And we want to be very conscious that, everything that we do in this space affects anyone that comes in. So we want to make sure that we keep ourselves healthy, but we also want to make sure that we kept our guests that are coming into the studio also healthy. So what we decided to do for a short period of time is to do traveling workshops, which we have been doing. We do a lot of corporate workshops. We get invited. We actually have one coming up next week, over 50 people. So that's a big workshop for a corporate event. And then we started to think, okay, what can the second space look like? So during that same time, we also heard that the city of Boston was providing grants, which is the Space Grant Initiative.
Mhm.
We heard of it. One of my former um, program participants in the nonprofit field reach out to me and say, "Hey, Julio, I think this is a great opportunity for you to expand."
Yeah.
So, I had a young person cheering up my dream, and here I am. I'm the one cheering up people's dream. So it's really exciting to have someone say, "Hey, you should apply." So I went ahead and applied. I have to be honest, I did the pre-application. I thought about it 3 times. I said, I don't know if I want to do the full application. But
Yeah.
anyways, I got ahead. I did the whole intense application process. I went through the interview process. Uh, and then I got really nervous. I think I messed up. I don't think I did a pretty good job. Obviously, this happens when you are under stress and
Yes.
interview process. I think this is very normal. And the only thing I can relate it to is interviewing for a damn job. I was like, here I am applying for a job again. Not quite, right? But I did an interview, and I was so lucky to receive a call from Aliyah from the city of Boston saying that I got the full grant that I had applied
Amazing.
for. It was really amazing. I remember crying. I remember saying, "Wow, this is dreams do come true sometimes."
Yeah.
You have to work a little bit hard for them, but you do. So anyway, so the reason I share that with you because the second location that we're going to be opening, although we have not yet started construction, just want to have full disclosure,
Mhm.
we are finalizing the layout. Um, so the funds are going to be used partially to pay for the construction and the build out of this space. This space
Gotcha.
is going to be almost 3 times the space that we have now. We have 650 square feet at the South Boston location, and our second location is going to be in downtown Boston, and that location is almost 2,000 square feet. Uh,
Wow.
to give you a perspective, but the most amazing part is that we're going to have our 3D lab there, 3D print lab in that second space. We're going to have the retail space that we have now. We're going to replicate it there. Our service counter, is going to be 2 or 3 times the size, which is great because the current one that we have is very narrow and very restraining.
Mm.
And we're going to have a snack bar,
Oh,
and we're going to
fun.
have a work. Yeah, and we're going to have a workshop space.
Mm.
So and people can rent the space for private events. People can also sign up for a workshop um, that we're going to be having on our website, which is microplanstudio.com. And people can also sign up for public and private events. So, which is really cool. And our hope is that corporate start to rethink how they can re-engage their employees, especially those that
Yes.
are not. so much physically in the office because I think this is a great opportunity for people to really bond. I really think about my time in the office. Sometimes being in the office is great because you get to chit chat with the coworkers, but sometimes that could be also very restraining, you know? So
Mm,
my goal is for the second space is that our sense of community, building the sense of community through plants and through workshops, right? So our workshops will vary from doing terrariums, from doing flower arrangements, from other stuff that I'm not gonna fully disclose yet because I don't want my model to be copied. Uh,
I totally get
uh,
that.
but it gives you, you know, the idea is that we want to give you, right, the consumer and all the other companies that work in downtown an opportunity to really rethink what the office space could look like when they're
Yeah.
bringing their employees right out of the office into a space that is meant for really engaging and really having authentic dialogues, but in a fun and intentional way. I think sometimes employees think about, you know, how we can shake up the culture, right? And making
Mm,
it friendlier. So I do see our business being a critical part of that culture of the company and really creating a space where people can interact with nature in the heart of the city of Boston, but also providing hopefully tourists that come in and see our business say, hey, I want to take a little 3D pot with a plant, right? That will be
yeah.
really, really amazing. But we want to become the place where people go and really have an immersive experience. You know, a lot of the things that I think of, you know, I always go back to the three things that I've been mentioning: community, authenticity, and engaging, right? So one of the things that I want to really be intentional is how do you take those three things, right, and build them in that particular space that we're going to be opening. I don't know the date of the opening yet. I think once we start the construction, we'll be able to be more certain and share the date. But for now, we have identified, we have signed a lease. It's just a matter of construction, you know, start, and then we'll share and disclose a little bit more details. Individuals that are interested in learning a little bit more about our upcoming events, they can go into our website, follow us on social media, which is the handle both for Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. It's Microplant Studio. Very
Yes.
simple. We keep our branding. We keep our branding as straightforward as possible. When you start doing too many gimmicks, it starts getting very fudgy and very
Yes.
confusing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so many exciting things coming up for you. And I agree too. This new location will be a great opportunity for companies to bring in their employees and do a unique and fresh type of team bonding that's different from the typical happy hours or trivia games or anything like that. Really a great way to just, like you said, focus on your pillars of community, authenticity, and engaging. So I think that's wonderful. And one thing I'm curious too is that for anyone who's listening to this episode who is also very passionate about plants and nature and stuff like that, and maybe interested in pursuing a career within that realm as well, what advice would you have for them for getting started within this space?
So one other thing is, did I lose contact? Did I lose
Oh,
contact?
no, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. You might have to edit that. Sorry. Um,
All good.
So just like in any business, when we opened our business, we did a business plan.
Mm,
We really looked at we looked into demographics. We were very intentional when we were planning to open, right? So I worked very closely with Dr. Erica Walker, for really looking at data. And we did a lot of homework. So every industry is a little bit different, right? So this industry is based on disposable income.
mm,
So that means you have to figure out, is your business is something that people need versus want. A want is I want a new car. It doesn't mean that you need it to survive, right? Food is a need. Shelter is a need, right? Those are basic things that we need as a human being to pretty much stay afloat. Now, for me, I had to really reconsider how much people's income is or was, right, within the neighborhood and how dense the neighborhood is. How many businesses are similar? Who are your competitors, right? Although we sell plants and we just only sell plants and flower arrangement with pots and so on is a supermarket near me, right?
Hmm.
Because supermarkets, they have sub departments and they are indirectly or directly your competitors. Um, and then how do you want to be recognized as a business owner, but also as a business? The name of the business is very important as well, right? So microplant studio refers, a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of people think that it's just tiny little plants, but it's not. The microplant studio stands for the space where I live, this tiny little studio, and then we decide to add plant as a means to add it to the algorithms. So when people look for plant store, they knew right away
Hmm.
that there's a plant store. So think about, again, demographic, name of your business, the amount of time that it needs and requires to build it up to where it needs to be built. Um, the plant business is not a plant business where you're going to make a ton of money. We don't sell alcohol. This is not a food industry. And those things, people pretty much go for it almost on a weekly basis, right? So just remember the variables for the numbers would actually look very different if you were selling alcohol versus food, right? And I think if you're breaking into this industry or trying to break into it, you're doing it because you care for the subject matter, and you're not doing it just because it's a transaction. Um,
Hmm.
because through one of the things that I always strongly have learned is both in the nonprofit sector and the work that I'm doing now is that when you come and you're talking about plant care, you also talk about self care.
Yeah.
And when you're starting to have those real authentic conversations, people will start talking about also about death in their family and so on. But when you are just having a transaction, right? Just because your business is not going to be able to be sustainable and you're not going to be able to really build a sense of community. So again, going back to the basic is really do your homework before breaking into the plan business and really consider, okay, are you just building a plant to sell plants or you're doing a plant business because you want to connect with people in a very different way. So that's something to consider. I'm not sure if I answered your questions, but I hope I did.
You did. You're so knowledgeable. I love the advice that you shared. I mean, you mentioned everything from the logo to really being able to think about the people that you're serving, because like you shared, it's a disposable income that people are using to purchase it. So I think these are all really helpful points for people to keep in mind if they are considering going down this path as well.
The
But
other thing that I wanted to share, I'm sorry,
yeah,
the other thing that I wanted to share is think about your network is your net worth.
yes,
And I
absolutely.
bet I know a lot of people might have asked have shared this with you, right? So as a person of color, we don't realize that the people that surround you is the people that make us rich. One, because they have an extension of people that they are connected to, right?
Hmm.
And as someone that doesn't come from a big network, I had to rely on people that I usually don't rely on. But one person that I usually relied on is actually a very good friend of mine that lives in South Boston, Ed Hale. And one of the things that I was able to do with him is also scout neighborhoods, being able to go out there and really look for different spaces and understand what the space could look like for that neighborhood. So one of the things that Ed did, because he walks down the strip where the current location is on West Broadway, he noticed a little sign that says space for rent. He had taken a picture, he had it stored on his photo, and he never shared it until like about a month, and because he completely forgot. And then I remember going to Rossendale and checking out a few spots. And then I remember, it was between Rossendale and South Boston location. And I remember asking him, "Hey, do you know of any spots?" And then he texted me and said, "Hey, Julio, I don't know if I share this with you, but this is a spot that maybe you should call." So again, relying and asking the right questions sometimes will lead to an answer.
Yes.
And that is also very true. And I'm sorry, I might be jumping off topic a
No,
little
go
bit.
for it.
But one of the things that I want to share is with people that are in customer service or any type of service that is also implied in social services. When a person is asking you a question, it's a form of a feedback. Do not take
Mm.
it personal. Usually people come in and ask me, hey, Julio, do you carry X and Y product? And we don't, right? If you hear the same question three times, that is a demand for that product to be on the shelf.
Yes.
So, and I share that with you because I go back to the same question that I asked Ed. Hey, Ed, do you know of any other places? And that little question triggered and reminded him that he did take a picture. And again, people might not have an answer right away for you, but maybe a month or 2 months or 3 months, that answer might unlock in their brain because it starts to make sense in the context, in the relationship that question was asked. So for that reason, be patient with the process. I think some of us are impatient. I know when I was a little bit younger, I was a little bit impatient because technology has forced us to do more instant gratification. You push, right?
Yes.
You input, you do an input, and then you get an output, right? And the idea is you're supposed to ask and get the answers right away. Well, that's not the case all the time, especially
Hmm.
when you're doing something for the first time and you're learning about it for the first time. So again, being patient, I think is very key when you're opening a business and when you're trying to break into a business that you have never even worked in, which is
Yes.
very important.
Yes, I agree. Great advice there. One of my favorite questions to ask our guests as well is what their favorite local businesses are to support. So I'm curious to hear the places you like to shop at, frequent, visit, all the fun things.
Okay. So in the spirit of immersive experiences, right? I have more than three, and I might forget maybe two or three because I always think in my head, and then when I'm gonna share something, I'll forget it. Um, but okay, so I'm gonna start with Bodega. So Bodega is a shoe store in by Bag Bay Prudential. I know they're temporarily closed because they're in the midst of actually relocating and they're going to open a larger store. But that particular business was one of the business that I remember going to when I was doing my undergrad. The cool thing is there is a bodega in the front. And in order to get to the shoe store, you have to stand in front of the sliding soda machine. Once you stand in front of it, it actually allows you to walk into the boutique shoe store.
Very cool.
Um, it is very cool. It is very fun. It's very artistic. It's very hip. It's very urban. You can only find that in an urban setting. You cannot find that nowhere else. But I also used to collect shoes. I don't collect shoes anymore. So that was actually one of the reasons why I made that connection. Um, there is not too far away, and this is actually for people that have kids. I love kids, as you already know, because I used to work with young people, young adults as well, and immigrant population as well. But there's another location that is a huge institution in the city of Boston. A lot of people don't know about it. Is the Eddie Baker Library. I think that's what it's called. I might be mispronouncing it or have the name wrong. But check out the Maparium. The Maparium, if you can Google it, it is super, super cool. I know it's not a traditional retail business, but it's a nonprofit that has a lot of history about the woman role in that particular time. It is a former newspaper, I believe. But the Maparium is amazing. You walk there. I don't know if you've been in the Maparium before.
No, I
Have you been
haven't.
to the? You haven't. How dare you not
I
to?
know. I need to add it to my list now.
Yes, yes, yes. But the cool thing is, and again, I'm a kid at heart, and I don't know, but you go there and you stand in this bridge that connects you from one side of the Maparium, it's all glass, by the way, it's all glass.
Gorgeous.
The acoustics are just amazing. So you stand from one side and then you walk through the bridge, which is all glass. You can see down, right? And you make your way through. Well, you're inside the globe now. Remember this. You're inside, and you make your way all the way out. The cool thing is, and again, about reflection, about nature, I love places that gives you an experience. In this place, when everybody's quiet, because you go through an experience where, the person that's giving the tour says, hey, just let's all have a moment of silence. You can
Mm.
almost hear your heart beat.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
that amazing. It's that amazing. So I like that. And again, it's not your traditional retail maybe suggestions that you might be asking for, but I think if you're looking for immersive experience, it's amazing. Now, downtown also has a really cool exhibition, and I forgot the name of it, but it's all interactive. It's
Oh
all
yeah.
about
Is
illusion.
it Wonder Museum? Maybe
I
I've
I
seen
I'm
that,
not.
but there's so
Yeah.
many cool interactive stuff in Boston. So I'm excited to hear what you have to share about this one.
Yeah, well, no, I go back to if you want to let your guard down and be a kid at heart, I'd say go for it. Why not? Anyways, I think I'm always a kid. So for that reason, I think a lot, I go back to really reactivating other senses of your
Yeah.
body, right? And sometimes I know when you travel that you're able to provoke that right from your senses.
Yes.
Your guard goes up, your guard goes down. You didn't know that you could do this or do that, and I think these type of museums and these type of immersive experiences really allow you. I think it's something illusions, I think something like that. Anyways, if you're able to add the little sound bite, say, hey, who is this, what you meant, and I'll be more than happy to send you the link. And I think there's another so there's another more traditional retail store that just closed, but I'm still going to mention it because I think these are the places that really inspire me, and I think these are out of the box type of ideas. Johnny Cupcakes, I don't know if you know
Yes, I
Johnny
did see it was
Cupcakes.
closing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was closing. So the reason I share it is because again it's a business that it started in Boston, right? Just like the Bodega shoe store. But these businesses really thought outside the box of how to really re-engage the customer in a very unique
Mm.
name. It also goes back to the name of the business, right? A bodega is not really a bodega, it's really a shoe store. Johnny Cupcakes doesn't sell cupcakes. It actually sells t-shirts with a theme of a cupcake box coming out of the oven. And I really think that when you're rethinking of an idea, it needs to redefine what retail and customer service could be in the experience, right? And for me, these two concepts, including museums that create a human interaction, because you also have the Museum of Fine Art, but that's a completely interactive. That's more of a traditional museum, right?
Hmm.
Versus the illusion museum, which is more about the human interaction, right, with the object that is being on display. One is more pure; you cannot touch it because it loses the value, right? And then you have the other one. No, you need to touch it. You need to interact with it so you can get the full human experience. So when I think about those ideas, both from a business perspective, is how you can create an experience that is transformative.
Yes.
And that for me, I'm very passionate. So I'm an installation artist. So I create spaces with experiences. So when I think about a show, right, or a retail experience, that's what I think of. There's also a sports store that just opened on Boylston Street. I don't know if you remember the name. Oh my God. It's a Knicks, I think.
Let
It's
me
a
see if I
Knicks.
can look it up. Well, let's see if I
Yeah.
can find it.
And I can add a little bit more to that. I think it's Knicks or Dix. Dix, the
Would it
Dix
be,
Sports.
it could be Dick's House of
I
Sport, it
think
says.
is it Boylston? Okay,
Yep.
so I think okay, great. So I think Dix. I know it's not a local small chain, right? Because they're more like a franchise, they're more
Yeah.
corporate. But when you think about what they're doing, it's also using technology because they have golf simulators, right?
Hmm.
You can wear some of the gear and so on. They also have a rock climbing. So it's really redefining the retail experience and how you can make it more interactive and where people are also able to spend more time. So it's not just grab and go anymore. It's really how you can have people spend more time, which also increases more value to their own personal life. So I go back,
Yes.
whatever product you do, you have to add value to people's life. And also the space is not just a space. Now it's a human interaction where people say, oh, let's look at shoes, but now let's also have an experience. And that's really what I'm trying to do with my second location.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you shared those immersive experiences because, like you mentioned, most people do tend to share like the restaurants, the retail stores, or stuff like that. And I think you shared some very cool options that people will be excited to check out. Julio, this has been an amazing episode. I feel like just very happy that I chatted with you. It was really cool to hear about what you've done with Microplant Studio for the first location, the plans that you have for the second location. There's a lot of good stuff that you have going on. And I know that you shared this earlier on in the show, but I'd love to make sure that you share again your website, where people can find you online, all of that stuff, so that way they can check it out.
Yeah, so I just want to encourage people if they are interested in in plant services both at home and in our studio, so they can bring also the plants. They can actually check out our website and they can make an appointment,
Perfect.
microplantstudio.com. Also, if they have any questions, they can also reach out again and make an appointment. We'll be more than happy to help them via Instagram. So we do a lot of online technical support with plants. And also remember that whatever you do, just do it with passion, with love and care, and be aware of the impact that we all have in each other.
Yes, love that. And I will, of course, link to all of your social media handles and website in the show notes that where listeners can click through and connect with you from there. But thank you so much for coming on today's podcast. This was really great.
Thank you so much and continued success. Thank you.